Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Now we'd like to continue our session in Indonesia Pavilion with the title of Reducing the Pressure on Ecosystem Through Wildlife and Biodiversity Conservation. As we all know, Indonesia is one of the 17 mega biodiversity countries. So Indonesia is rich in natural resources and also biodiversity. But this has caused considerable concern that the economic development of Indonesia will threaten biodiversity. So today we are going to hear from the speakers on how we can, especially in Indonesia, how to reducing the pressure on ecosystem through wildlife and biodiversity conservation. Without further ado, I would like to introduce Prof. Jatna Supriyatna, the moderator of today's session. He is the chair of Indonesia Sustainable Development Solution Network, or UNSDSN, and he's already here with us with all the distinguished speakers. So, to Mr. Jatna, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning. Good afternoon. And so, thank you for the introduction. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're really happy to have a very good speaker. First of all, Dirjen, Director General of the Natural Resources and Ecosystem Conservation, Ministry of Environment and Forestry, Bapak Wiratno. Then we have Ms. Elim Sritaba, the Chief of Sustainable Officer from Asia Pulp and Paper. The third speaker will be Eni Sudarmawati, Professor Eni Sudarmawati, the Chair of Indonesia Unesco Man and Biosphere National Committees. The fourth speaker is Professor Francesco Bertolini. He's the President of Green Management Institute Forests and Future. Also, he's a professor on management from Bocconi University, Italia. And the last speaker will be Dr. Evansa, Senior Advisor to the Ministry of Environment and Forestry. So let's ask all these speakers to be in the front. So as the title of this discussion is going to be reducing the pressure on ecosystem through wildlife and biodiversity conservation. So we have ABG, academician, bureaucrat, business, and the government. So it's really good that we're going to talk about how the pressure of this ecosystem pressure, especially on the biodiversity and wildlife conservation. So without further ado, I'd like to ask Pak Dirjen, Pak Wiratno, to speak about 10 minutes, Pak, if that's possible, or 10 or 15 minutes.
Thank you, Pak Yatna. Thank you, Pak Yatna, my senior. Ladies and gentlemen, it's not easy to speak within 10 minutes about the wildlife and the problem in Indonesia. I try to do my best. In principle, I have a duty, what we call it, wildlife conservation without border. Wherever there is a wildlife, I have to take care of them. We have to take care of them. And considering all the development and land use change, everything, the duty will be much heavier right now. Yeah, in Indonesia we have the three principles in conservation, nature conservation, what we call it, protection, preservation, and utilization at the three scale: ecosystem, species, and genetic. Long ago, I learned about the principle or important principle. What do we call it? We have to save it. We have to study it and we use it. And the principle of use is at the end of the those principle. Yeah. So saving the habitat, the tropical rainforest and marine and coastal and is the important one. That is why we right now have on 27.14 million hectare of protected area system, and about 5 million hectare out of it is the marine protected areas. And we have also, like other countries, we also got what we call it global recognition, like World Heritage, Biosphere Reserve, where right now Miss Prof. Prof. Annie still become, yeah, the president of Wildlife International, Wildlife Biosphere Reserve, the president of Biosphere Reserve. And we also have Ramsar site, Geopark, and so on and so forth. So globally, our natural resources is recognized and it's very important, but it is not easy managing the protected areas in the scope of development. We have a very important big mammal here in this floor. We have an expert on orang utan, Sumatran orang utan. We have also Sumatran tiger, elephant, and rhino. As you realize just now, the Malaysia, they lost the last of their rhino. And Malaysia, they don't have rhino at all. It's gone forever. And we are in the process of helping them in rhino exit to conservation. Here we have the home ring of Sumatran tiger, elephant, orangutan. Also we have later the rhino, Sumatran rhino and Javan rhino in Indonesia. Of course, what we face is the wildlife human conflict. This is one of the biggest challenge and problem we face in Indonesia. But we also have forest. I don't know, other country, forest is not like a white paper. Forest is something that there is an interaction with the local people, even the masyarakat adat, for instance, they live in the national park. Here, 27.14 million hectare is surrounded by more than 6,000 villages. 6,000 villages, and they are depending directly or indirectly to the resources, to the protected areas. The problem we face in Indonesia, first, in the case of wildlife human conflict, first, uh, almost more than 75% of wildlife living outside of protected area system. Yeah, and the production forest and the conservation forest. Since we are doing on, established a planning on conservation areas in 1980, mostly we gazetted the protected area system in the mountain area and the mountainous area and not in the lowland area. And finally, we found out that they are living in the more in the downstream in the lowland area. This is the first problem. The second is, of course, there is a lack of public awareness and public participation in protecting the wildlife. Also in protecting the national park or protected areas. There is a lack of awareness of public. There is a lack of collective action to save them, to protect them, to manage them. There is also a problem of habitat loss, habitat conversion, habitat overlapping between habitat and infrastructure development and other purposes. There are many monoculture, plantation, and so on and so forth. There's also a race problem. Another issue is about the poverty of the local villagers. In the case of Sumatra, there is a mass migration. For instance, in Riau province, there is a lot of migration from Java, Lampung, South Sumatra to the Riau, for instance. This also raises wildlife-human conflict. And of course, insufficient law enforcement, especially not to the poor, but to the intellectual actor, the baron, who control the poor to poach the wildlife, to trade the wildlife. That is the root causes of the wildlife-human conflict, and we lost our wildlife. This is the example, the picture of Sumatran tiger. It's very handsome, isn't it? We got a lot of problem because of the sling. A lot of, apa ya? Betul, sling ya? Jerat, the sling. Very important Javan rhino. We only have right now in the Ujung Kulon National Park. This is a good news that we just got the baby born rhino. It is about 4 in 2018, then 4 in 2019. The red one is the core zone of the national park. There's also a threatening situation if the Krakatoa exploded someday, and we only have one habitat left for the Javan rhino. Ini nggak kelihatan. Yeah. We also have a strategy on between in situ and ex situ conservation. In situ meaning we protect the wildlife and their own habitat and the pristine habitat. And ex situ is outside the habitat. In the case of Sumatran rhino, for instance, we do both between in situ and exit we have in the sanctuary. And if the exit to in situ is not, successful enough, we try to put the emphasis to the exit to situation, and we establish the sanctuary for rhino, Sumatran rhino. This is the strategy. And if we successful, we have a Bali myna, very famous bird in Bali. Also, in the case of in situ, we have a Javan hawk that is now is very successful, protected, and almost almost their all habitat across Java Island. In the case of a problem on the wildlife and biodiversity conservation, I think the strategy is on the adaptation strategy is how to mainstreaming the conservation into every development sector. It is the challenge. Put it in the spatial planning at the province and at the national level. And then how to put the local community as a key, local community and key stakeholder, private sector, NGOs, local expert, local NGO, local university, as a part of the main actor to save the wildlife, put them in the front line of the wildlife conservation. And the mitigation strategy, how to mainstream conservation values in the spatial development planning. Again, putting the local community. I set up a call center across this country, so community can report if there is a wildlife conflict, if there is poaching, if there is an illegal logging, and so on. So we set up a call center, and then, of course, restoring the habitat again by involving the community and preparing the new habitat for wildlife. Can you imagine the relation between the veterinarian and the elephant? This is Dr. Rosa. She is very famous doctor, veterinarian in Aceh, and in Aceh province there are a lot of problem of wildlife human conflict, and we have to take care of the elephant there. I think we should use our heart if we want to work in conservation. It's not only about economic calculation or on policy, but using our heart, like Dr. Rusa. And also very important that Bhiksu Nyana Pratama is a religious man. I call him a holy man who loves the elephant, and in this place they collect the money from themselves and to help in order to help the rhino if there is a problem on rhino, and he also raised awareness on the elephant conservation. Of course, this is my my principle. You want to success in protecting and managing conservation areas, you have to put the community as a key actor, the main actor. Second, we have to respect human rights, The third is, as in Indonesia, we have to always to collaborate across the ministerial level, interagency cooperation. We have to respect to the local cultural diversity. It's require multi-level leadership. We need, of course, scientific-based decision-making process. We always have to work at the field level. The problem in the field and the solution is also at the field level, not from the central government. Yeah, reward and mentorship, and I always say that we have to learn. We have to set up a learning organization, learning from domestic. And I want to give you a very short film on the baby born rhino and example of Marubetiri, Javan, clouded leopard ya? Bisa di? This is in Ujung Kulon National Park. Very cute. Yang dilihat pantatnya ya, karena ini video. This is coming from video trap. The second one is from Marubetiri. Very healthy and very cute. So forest without wildlife is not a forest. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pak Veer. I think the message is very clear. There is a partnerships message, stakeholders, and no one left behind. So let's start with the partnerships. We're going to have Ibu Elim from the private sector. So how that really, the action to curb, that's the deforestation and also the wildlife in, of course, in the companies. Ibu Elim, the time is yours.
Thank you, Pak Yatna. Like what our Director General said, that the wildlife, there is no boundary for the wildlife. So I would like to explain how our company, as a industrial forest company, to manage the wildlife within our concession. So as a basis of our initiative in sustainability, this is our sustainability roadmap and our policy in 2013 when we stopped to using natural forests, and we committed to protect forests within our concessions. Of course, this is one of the initiatives that we support our government to achieve how we can protect the key endangered species. Like what our DG said, that within our concession there are three key endangered species: orangutan, Sumatran tiger, and also elephant. So about 600,000 hectare protected area within our concession in 5 provinces. We have been protected after we did our assessment for high conservation value and high carbon stock area. And this is the initiative how we protect wildlife within the forestry concession, starting by determining the area and mapping of endangered species habitat, and like what our DG said, using special planning, and we mapping all the wildlife movement and home range within our concession, because we realized that there is no boundary within the forest for wildlife habitat. So this is one of the map, and from South Sumatra, which is area of tiger and also elephants. And this is within the Riau area, within our concession, Jambi. There is Sumatran and also elephants. And in Kalimantan, we had orangutan. So, of course, after the mapping, how we can, what is the strategy to protect the forest? Because of the forest, it's wildlife habitat. So using high technology, because of we know that in the size 600,000 is like 10 times of, almost 10 times of Singapore area. So we use this technology to monitor the forest cover changes to make sure that the forest still in a good condition. So this technology will tell us if there is a forest cover changes, they will send us as an alert, and then we can prioritize and monitor the area. And then we do some collaborative conservation management with the communities as well, and also using smart patrol to help us to monitor the area. And then by using this technology, we can reduce the threat from the illegal activities from before more than 5% and now less than 1% within the 600,000 hectares. And of course, collaborative with the community is important. Using this smart patrol as a digital, this is one of the tools that developed by a consortium of a local NGO and also international NGO. And then we socialize with the local communities, including our security and also biodiversity patrol within the concession. And of course, to reduce or mitigate the human-wildlife conflict mitigation, we develop a standard operating procedure for our workers to ensure that we can eliminate the wildlife conflict with the human. So, of course, training is important. So we train all the employees, our workers, to avoid this or mitigate conflict within the operation itself. And of course, after we map, this is one of our strategy, which is if we identify some of the area which is have a wildlife movement, we also adjust to our operational. For example, the harvesting plan, we manage if there is a elephant past the area, we monitor, and then we also have a adjustment to our harvesting plan. And of course, some of the degraded area within the 600,000 right now is only about the 60% in the good condition, and of course the 40% we need to restore back. And then our target, how to make this forest in the good condition up to 95% in the next 5 years. So this is beside the wildlife, we also identified the key endangered tree species within the concession, because we know that this is important to be protected. So this is some of the species that we identify within our concession, and then we also already put in our spatial planning to ensure that the habitat or the ecosystem still there. And also by doing the restoration, we can do some enrichment. Even also we work with Minister of Environment Agency, research agency in national and also in Yogyakarta to do some propagation with for the some endangered species. This is one of the endangered nursery in Riau and also in East Kalimantan. So this is one of the sample that there is no boundary, and then we have our internal analysis that about 7% of Sumatran elephant population always pass within our concession area. And then I will show you also in the last my presentation, some of our camera traps catch this wildlife within our concession. And about 9% as well, Sumatran tiger within population always within our concession using at their habitat and corridor. and about 15% of orangutan, Bornean orangutan population in Kutai landscape. So this is one of the wildlife monitoring. Of course, we put a lot of camera traps installed in areas that we already identified the population, the corridor or the habitat. And then this is, of course, to achieve the protection of the wildlife, we cannot do ourselves. This is all our partner. And of course, this is something we know that as a private sector, we also have to contribute to protect the key species. And to achieve this inclusiveness, not only local NGO, but also community is the key. And the landscape, like we understand that there is no boundary for the wildlife. And to achieve sustainable forest management has to include key species protection and their ecosystem habitat. Like what Pak Digi said, there is no forest if there is no wildlife within the forest. So thank you. I will show some of a video, a very cute that catch with camera trap in our concession. Okay. Thank you very much.
It's beautiful, isn't it? It's the tigers. Wow, that's really good one. Oh, the mother. Okay, thank you. Well, Elim said is a borderless too. So Pak Wiratno starting with the borderless. So for animal, of course, there is no boundaries. There is no district level. There is nothing. They don't know where's the border. So important to be working also with the private sector. So that was really the key, what the both of these speaker. And the third speaker will be Professor Annie Sudarmanawati. He's going to talk about this, how that international, especially man and biosphere, also support this kind of initiative. So the floor is yours, Bu Annie.
Good afternoon. I hope you're still wide awake. It will be 10 minutes with me. Please bear with me. My talk would be on conserving and mainstreaming biodiversity in biosphere reserve in a time of climate change. This is the outline of my talk. It would be the program of man and biosphere, and also, of course, biodiversity in versus climate change. ex situ conservations and combining with in situ conservations by economic way forwards and conclusions. We all know that because of the degradation of the habitat, it will be also impacting on world populations. It will be 9 billion in 2050, so we need to double our food and also not just the quantity but also the quality and also the health quality. So we have many challenges to face. So then we also have fact that there are many reductions of the habitat and the quality of life. So we all know if we talk about Indonesia, we have more than 17,000 islands. This morning, many people giving the data quite variable, but this one is actually the official data from the Ministry of Fishery and Marine. So, and also we have 16 biosphere reserves of Indonesia, where in the world, in the network of a World Biosphere Reserve Network, there are 701 biosphere reserves in 124. So we also have challenges on the Industrial Revolution era 4.0 and also the Society 5.0 era. So then we have to combine all the challenges and facts and also the opportunity, of course. Threats, you all know already, this one not just Indonesia but also worldwide. So one of them is climate change and also the invasive alien species and others. Just to refresh you how rich is Indonesia, if we talk about Indonesia, just an example. So not many populations or diversity is actually reaching above 50%, but to give you the figure, for example, on honeybee, we are actually reaching more than 80%. But also we also think about the endemicism. So, for example, we talk about birds, 26% of birds and also 44% of butterfly endemics in Indonesia. This is the survey and the study done by Indonesian Institute of Sciences. It needs to be updated every 2 years. So biodiversity types and richness in 7 largest islands in Indonesia on fauna, flora, so that we also combining with microorganisms. Survey on marine invasive species in addition to terrestrial invasive species already done also. Of course, it needs to be updated all the time, and our DG already mentioned about the biodiversity loss. So I just give you one slide example, the biodiversity loss in one of Indonesian island in Sulawesi. So we also, if we talk about biodiversity, Indonesia, if we talk about Indonesia, could be considered as number 1 if we combine between terrestrial and marine. So many studies already done with the marine biodiversity on coral reef and also seagrass and also others. And some new species already found, not in marine and also in terrestrial, fauna, flora, and also microorganism, and some already under way soon, not just the new species, but also new record. Bioresources map, China already finished with the map, but not Indonesia because it's so large and also so rich. So Indonesia just finished 70% of the bioresources map. So hopefully by the end of this year, it will be 10 maps finished. I now move to the MAP program, Man and Biosphere program of UNESCO. It's actually the basis within the natural and the social sciences for sustainable use and conservation of biological diversity and for the improvement of the relationship between people and their environment. In short, it's actually harmonization between people and the environment. The strategy of MAP, we have strategy 2015 to 2025. It's got four pointers, important four pointers. I just give you the highlights of the pointers. Conserving biodiversity, restoring and enhancing ecosystem services. So not just biodiversity, but ecosystem services, and fostering sustainable use of natural resources. Second, the harmonization between the sustainable, healthy, and equitable societies, economics, and thriving human settlements in harmony with biosphere, and facilitating biodiversity, sustainable science, and education. So education is very important, and also research and monitoring, and supporting mitigations and adaptation of climate change and other aspects of global environment change. To implement the MAP strategy, the UNESCO already established what we call it Lima Action Plan, because it's agreed in Peru, in Lima, in 2016. It has 5 strategic action areas. I don't want to go into detail, but one of them is actually effectively functioning models for sustainable development. So that's why sustainable development goals is very important, the link between SDGs and the MAP program of UNESCO. And another strategic action area is about partnerships. So I'll be talking about partnership, especially with private sectors and governments. SDGs, since this morning, many people talk about SDGs, and also Professor Bertolini also mentioned about SDGs, but I'm going to talk about SDGs linked with Biosphere Reserve and also Man and Biosphere Program, because MAP combines the natural and social sciences, economics, and education to improve human livelihoods and so on. Man and Biosphere has Biosphere Reserve, I mentioned earlier, 701 across the world in 124 countries. It got 3 pillars. One is conservation, development, and research and monitoring. So that's why research is very important in this program as compared to other programs of UNESCO. It's implemented in 3 zones, core zone in the middle, and then buffer zone and transition zones. So it's not just the Biosphere Reserve in each country, but also transboundary, and next will be sister or twinning Biosphere Reserve that we will really encourage. So it's scattered in 5 regions of Man and Biosphere program in the world. So this is Indonesia, and the newest one in Samota in West Nusa Tenggara, and also in Togean in Sulawesi. I'm going to underline the importance of the Biosphere Reserve, because if we talk only the the core zone, we only talk about 5 million hectares. But we talk about the whole area of Biosphere Reserve, it will be up to like 6 times of the core zones. For example, if we count 27,000 millions, and and even 2 of the core zone of the Biosphere Reserve Indonesia, like Tanjung Puting and Lolorindo, it's up to 10 times of the core zones, meaning that we really do the sustainable development implementation in the Biosphere Reserve. Key factors and principles, of course, is actually the commitment of the partners and also other stakeholders, good governance, awareness, capacity building, innovation, market, and of course, branding. Now I come to the role of private sectors in Biosphere Reserve. For example, there are 3 new initiatives. One, the Fauna Flora International with April on ecosystem restorations, concession development in the Kampar landscape. Second is GSL with Musim Mas on buffer zone management around the Dangku Nature Reserve. And the third one, which is very new, recently agreed with ZSL and APP Sinarmas and ConocoPhillips on wildlife monitoring, human-wildlife conflict mitigations, and law enforcement in Berbak Sembilan landscape. Berbak Sembilan just been designated by Unesco as Biosphere Reserve. So we need to encourage the involvement of private sectors, need to be replicated worldwide in Indonesia and even in the world. I'm going to give you one example, one or two example of the Biosphere Reserve in Indonesia that has private sector's involvement. One of them is Giam Siak Kecil and Bukit Batu in Riau, which is the first Biosphere Reserve in the world initiated and also co-managed by private sectors. This is based on PPP, public-private partnership, which is with APP, Sinarmas. It covers more than 700,000 hectares of peatland. And it's also showing all the demonstrating the partnership with all stakeholders, including private sectors. And research, a lot of research already been done in the area, including facilitating by the establishment of the research center. It was inaugurated this year, a research center on, a research station we call it, on ecohydrology and peat swamp study. And this one, or some of the study related to microalgae. So a lot of potential issues found in this area. This is the microalgae studies, which is potential for biofuel and also pharmaceutical products. This is proven that microalgae oil content compared to others. For biofuel, bio-oil, and biohydrogen, and even the first scooter in Indonesia powered by biohydrogen. And another example is Berbak Sembilan Biosphere Reserve in Jambi and South Sumatra provinces. It's located in the southeast coast of Sumatra. It's also peat swamp and the area of migratory birds. A habitat also for Sumatran tiger and elephants, and also there are plantation in there, including oil palm plantation. But we trying to manage that. The total area is more than 3 million hectares. And in this area, some studies already conducted by one research center of LIPI concerning the screening assessment of white rot fungi in Berbak Sembilan. And this one already got potential that for wastewater treatment. So it's very potential and promising study on that. So when we talk about biodiversity, we of course has to combine with bioeconomy for food, for accommodation, ecotourism, transportation, and branding. So this already been done in some biosphere reserve in Indonesia and also in the world. So the logo already been used. So a form of certification and eco-labeling. It's good to increase the value of the product. So it's already proven in one biosphere reserve, for example, in Indonesia. It's increased the number of tourists, increased the income per capita, and reduced the jobless. And this one also proven that it's already contributing for health, for medicine, and also for biofungicides, biopesticides, and others, and also cultivation together with local community on marine species like sea cucumber, so that we need to increase this one. Also the ecosystem services on carbon stock study. People already mentioning about the ecosystem services that need to be increased, and also including ecotourism and other potential products to be branded, and eco-labeling and certifications. So we need to increase awareness program environmental education. Also, we have a program that we call it Proud to Share, which is only 3-minute video that need to be published or produced by all biosphere reserve in the world. So this is the environmental education that already done in several biosphere reserve, for example, in Indonesia on marine. So I'm going to take several minutes for the combination between biosphere reserve and the ex situ conservation in a form of botanic garden, which is normally in the border, in the buffer zone of the area. So, for example, in Indonesia, there are now 39 botanic gardens, so that it based on the ecoregion, we can conserve many biodiversity based on 47 ecoregions. So this is some of the example of the collections based on the ecoregions, and we already transfer back a reintroduction program to the nature of the endangered species and threatened species. So not just biodiversity conservation, but also how to access and benefit sharing. So Indonesia already has the law and regulations. So this is my last 2 slides. So what to do next and also the conclusions. Of course, it's already proven through biosphere reserve, we could demonstrate as a model site using biosphere reserve to address climate change. Some of the targets of the 17 SDGs could be achieved either directly or indirectly. So we need to do a lot of collaborations and strengthening networking, do more awareness and also educations. So there are still networking also, South-South and North-South cooperations for increasing the bioeconomic, both green and blue economy. So then we need more action to do from all of you in here. Thank you very much. Gracias, terima kasih.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I think Professor Annie has been mentioning about this research, need research, also how that the strategy from the man and biospheres communicated it into the sustainable development, but also as about branding. So I'd like to call Professor Bertolini, Francesco Bertolini, who's coming from the business school. So
today, Financial Times say that my business school is the 3rd in the world, so I'm proud of it. So thank you very much. I'm very glad to be here, and thank you, Jatna. And may I have my presentation, please? Okay. So, tell me. Okay. So my presentation will be a little bit different from the former ones, because my goal is to present what's going on between conservation projects and business. Why business should be part of conservation projects? We all know about global issues, CO2, deforestation, plastic. Plastic is a big issue right now. In many countries, plastic is the enemy right now. So business are trying to change their packaging, are trying to change their business model in order to reduce the use of plastic. The markets consumers don't want plastic anymore. So you see there how many plastic is mismanaged especially in Southeast Asia. There are many countries where plastic is not managed for 80–90% of the total amount of plastic in the country. So companies should be part of conservation programs for many reasons, for SDGs, for financial institutions that looks for and ask for commitment, environmental commitment and conservation commitment, for boycott campaign. You know how bad it could be for a company to be considered guilty from the public opinion. You remember, many of you remember the famous campaign against KitKat because of orangutan in Indonesia. And there are so many other campaigns against child labor, against deforestation and so on. So companies are aware, or the awareness of companies is getting bigger and bigger. So more and more companies are committing themselves to conservation projects. You see here some of these companies. Some of them are already involved in projects in Indonesia. Some others are involved in projects in Latin America or in Africa. And one of the main reasons right now is connected to SDGs. What does it mean? It means that this is an example from Ferrero. You know Ferrero, the famous Nutella company. 15 out of the 17 SDGs are directly or indirectly addressed by Ferrero. It means that every project that Ferrero develops all over the world are connected with SDGs, because when they present every year their activities, every business, every operation is connected to one of the SDGs. What does it mean? It means, what does it mean in terms of this goal in this country? Are we able to improve this goal in this country or not? If we are not, we have to increase our efforts to improve this goal and to achieve these goals. Finance, you know, there are more and more SDGs investment fund. That means that these financial institutions invest only in companies that achieved some goals. And this is very important, because you know how important is finance for big, especially for big companies. Look at these numbers. 50% of European companies present their SDGs commitment and is considered good or excellent. 300 companies out of 400 biggest companies in the world disclose commitment to the SDGs. This is the trend of the SDGs fund compared to the other index in the world. You see, the SDGs funds have a better return on investment compared to Dow Jones, even compared to Dow Jones Sustainability Index, compared to Standard & Poor's and Morgan Stanley Capital Investment Index. It means that to be good in terms of sustainability means to be good in terms of financial results. If you are sustainable, you have good return on your investment. And this is great. This is great if you are a businessman, if you are a company, if you are a big company, if you are a very responsible company. Why companies should be part of conservation programs? Carbon credits. Shell plans to invest more than $300 million over the next 3 years to reduce its carbon footprint by up to 3%. You know, the carbon credits, the price right now is getting is going high. It's rising after many years when the price was going down. Climate change, you know, deforestation. All over the world, especially in Europe, especially in Northern America, we think that transport is guilty, is the most dangerous enemy of climate change. Very few people, not here of course, but the public opinion, don't know that 20% of deforestation, of CO2 is represented by deforestation. So deforestation is more responsible than the global transport sector, globally speaking. As I was talking before, the boycott campaign, every day in which a company's boycott was in the news, its stock price declined. So we have to be careful about our commitment, our strategies when we talk about sustainability, because the market right now is very mature. It's not like 20, 30 years ago. If you go to developed European markets or North American markets, consumers look the ingredients of the product. They want to know all the story of the products, and if the product has some bad ingredients, even in terms of reputation, even in terms of all the supply chain, they don't buy that product anymore. And This means business. This means return on investment. That's why Indonesia has a huge potential. Indonesia is a treasure in terms of biodiversity. It's a treasure in terms of peatlands. You know how important is peatlands for climate change, for carbon storage. And what is doing business? I don't want to talk about Indonesia because everyone talk about Indonesia. I want to give you a kind of overview about what business is doing and then how business can be involved in conservation project. An example, the challenge of plastic. We know how many millions of plastic every year go to the ocean. They stay around 8 million tons a year. And we made a project in Italy. In Italy, 42% of total packaging is food packaging. And we try to understand what kind of achievements we could reach, we could achieve, what kind of goals we could achieve if we could change packaging, plastic packaging with compostable packaging. Compostable means paper, compostable means bioplastic, compostable means a mix of plastic and bioplastic and paper. Only considering this simple packaging to package meat, cheese, bakeries and fruits, we could save 200 tons of plastic. This means develop a circular economy. It means reduce the amount of tons, the CO2 that we produce in our process. And if we look to nature, in nature, they don't use packaging. So thank you very much. I've been very brief.
Thank you. Well, you know, Professor Bertolini just mentioned about how do we do branding. The word branding, it's easy to say, but it's not really easy to do it. But let me, before Dr. Franza, because he's going to be gluing this 4 or 5 speakers. But let me rephrase what that really the first speaker. The first speaker said, we have 21 million hectares. We have wildlife, biodiversity rich, but we need a partnership because all the animals is borderless, going somewhere in the companies, concession, and also in national parks. And then the second speaker said, well, you know, our company committed to help this because the 10% of rages of these elephant, tigers, and everything is in the concession. So they have to put something that help this the Director General. And the third speaker is really about this, how rich. But he said it's very important to have the harmonization on this between the protected area with community. And that's why it's man and biosphere is about. And how to glue these things. And the fourth speaker, it's a very important, the branding. How do you get the branding? Because what he said, that the carbon credit basically now, I heard about this 16 times than 10 or 20 years ago. It's not 16%, 16 times the price. So now everybody is trying to have it, how that really get it. So without further ado, we'd like to have Dr. Efransa. He's a former president of Indonesian World Wildlife Fund, Indonesia. Now he's the advisor to the Minister of Environment and Forestry. So he has a background in government, NGOs, academician. I don't know what they do have to say. So the time is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good afternoon. We are late already. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. This is not a lucky time speaking towards the end of the schedule. I know my colleague Professor Jatna got a high expectation on me to glue all this, but I don't know how to glue and I don't prepare anything. But it is clear to our mind, there are two immediately striking words. First, conservation of biodiversity, and then Professor Bertolini introduced for the first time the word treasures. So, treasures is something, when you say biodiversity, it does not ring your bell. But when we say, this is treasures, so then you start imagining in Bahasa Indonesia what's so-called harta karun, etc. Then there is much more value to put in it. Biodiversity, you think is just a row of spinach, banana, monkey, and all the elephant, all these kind of things. So it is important to have the right perception of what we are talking about. That is my first point. So the two first speakers, the Director General and my colleague, Professor Eni, mentioned to you in elegant way about all enablings and framework, legal framework, and what has been so much happened by the government to define things, to define the treasures. So now you almost have a map, another 30% left of bioresources, for instance. So 70% of bioresources have been mapped by our colleague, our expert from LIPI in collaboration with other institutions. So we have all this information, we have all this knowledge. The challenge is when we try to move to another level, from that enabling factors to the operation on the ground. And our friend from private sector try to demonstrate what so-called monitoring of a small aspect of biodiversity, if I wish. Why I saying that? It does not mean it's not important. But when we talk about elephant is key important species, in particular elephant, Sumatran elephant, because it's different than the African elephant. So it's good. But you know, there are so many other things to monitor. How can we do that? And then come the Convention on Biodiversity, describing us to do that through an ecosystem approach. My point is, it is important to know the population of a species, whether the trend is up or down, and then we do something about it later. But it is also important to check on all other bioresources in relation to the existence of that elephant. Maybe there are so many things. This is related to the food availability, related to the space, related to everything for the life and existence of elephant population alone. So let's say the tiger and so many other things. So it is important then we go to see that in a bigger picture. So many professors taught us in the school, you have to go to a very big landscape ecosystem and then define key features and start studying the system. This elephant and tiger, are they related? Or to what other aspect of ecosystem they are related? Now, they are also related to the climate change. And it may force them to move or migrate to the other area. I think it's not a mystery, Pak Director General, I think we are all aware that many of our key species is no longer, not all, reside within the conservation area, but they are living outside the national park and far outside the conservation area. Maybe they come back, but in most of the case, they are not in the national park. Say, orangutan population, I think half of it is outside the conservation area. So they are at the concession area, they are everywhere. So system needs to be understood. And then the second one is also trying to figure out the stress. What is the stress of this system? Well, it has been mentioned by previous speakers about all this degradation, habitat loss, and then now climate change come to it. There are pressures. Because of pressures, there are stress, which impact the behavior and also the existence of a or several population. And then after determining system stress, I'm going to the 3S theory, and then we go for the measures, strategies to mitigate and the strategies to monitor. This is what all about, which if you ask me to glue, we have to do that in a package. I cannot imagine one company trying to chase after an elephant, another just tiger, etc., and then but we don't have the overall picture. And then we don't know whether we can map this in relation to the bioresources or whatever map indicating the treasures, indicating the richness of biodiversity of the country and of the region. So monitoring, the system of monitoring and the follow-up, what for of this monitoring is still vague, still lacking. I think we do monitoring in a very scattered way and in a very isolated individual, either private or government institutions. So this is what I heard. And biodiversity is something that need to discuss much closer to the climate change because of the effect vice versa. And in relation to the credit news, it's good that the price is up, mentioned. It is regretful to say that in the negotiation under this Paris Agreement, the Article 6, 6 or 16, in relation to this, has not been moved too fast. Either is carbon market or the voluntary market. So I think we need to expedite a little bit in order to get the momentum right so that this NDC later on in terms of ambitious target of respective country can be further pushed up. I think that's all I can say, Professor Jatna, about this, but we're gonna talk biodiversity more and years after this. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a very important what he said about the system of change. How do we change? How do we monitor, collaborative monitoring? It's very easy to say, but not simple. I really like it. We still have 10 minutes for question and answer. If anyone have a burning issue, let me know. So, anyone? It's a very interesting to see how that the collaborative effort between the private sector, the NGOs, the government, also the academician. Nobody want to asking something? Otherwise, we're gonna close it. Anyone like to have it? You know one, if anyone wanted to say something, maybe 2-3 minutes, because the time is very short.
Yeah, even less than 3 minutes actually, because I was chased for 10 minutes, so I forgot to mention, to underline that actually we have to do collaborations, the concept of man and biosphere in a form of biosphere reserve is actually multi-stakeholders commitment needed. So multi-sectoral interdisciplines areas needed. So one of the example already given to you is even two in Giam Siak Kecil, Bukit Batu Biosphere Reserve and Berbak Sembilang Biosphere Reserve. Actually, the demonstrations of the Biosphere Reserve sites that demonstrating the collaboration of all parties. For example, in Berbak Sembilang, not just APP, but also foundations and also national and also international NGO, also already collaborating, also universities and governments. So this one is very good for demonstrating again the harmonization between people and the nature, environment by multi-stakeholders commitment. Thank you.
Thank you, Bu Ani. Yes, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm Faisal Parish, Global Environment Center. Just some information and maybe a question for DG. We've been working with a number of stakeholders in the South Ketapang area of West Kalimantan. There is a very large landscape we're calling South Ketapang landscape, about 750,000 hectares. 20% is strict government conservation area, Hutan Lindung, and also Cagar Alam Muara Kanduwangan. And about 50% of the landscape is a combination of industrial tree plantation and oil palm plantations. And there's been an initiative under the coordination of the Bupati, the district head, to coordinate all of the different stakeholders, community, private sector, government agencies together to collaborate on that landscape. Progress has been good, and a lot of companies along the boundary of the Cagar Alam, the strict conservation area, have been very positive about how to work together. But we've faced a challenge because it's a Cagar Alam or strict nature reserve. And theoretically, I mean, under the law, no one is meant to be there or doing activity, but there's been so much degradation and fires within it. And the companies are positive about wanting to play a proactive role in helping to restore. And there's also some small village within a small enclave trapped in the middle with 30 kilometers from the nearest outside access. And the companies are looking to see how it's possible to work under the rules of the Cagar Alam system to engage them in a broader way. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your comment, and I should work together with it. Even in the strict nature reserve, we can work with the local community, private sector, and partners. Yeah. Thanks. Hopefully, I will also visit Bu Elim area, and the guidance from my minister is that we have to work with everybody at the ground level. Thank you again.
Thank you, Pak. I think anyone? So otherwise, Pak, silakan. Just only one more.
Thank you. My name is Si Ho from April Group. Yeah. I noticed in the presentation by Professor Annie, some of the partnership on conservation between, say, for instance, from FFI with April, to SL with Musimas, with APP Sinarmas, were recognized. Yeah. So this kind of acknowledgement is very encouraging for the private sectors. Yeah. Not in order to make a claim, yeah, but it encourages more collaboration. It acknowledges some progress. A lot of the partnership are not yet perfect, yeah. But if it is acknowledged by researchers, by academia, by the government, then it will continue to encourage more collaboration among the private sectors and also with other stakeholders. So I think there is a need for us to lodge in or to register all kinds of collaboration so that together, collectively, we can build positive narrative about how we are promoting conservation in Indonesia. Thank you.
Thank you. I think, Pak Siho, it's really good. So positive narrative is very important. I think it's a show from all the presenters and the gluing from Pak Erapansa that we need to have a system of change, the positive narrative, and all these things. So, ladies and gentlemen, I know that the time is off, so thank you very much for the speaker. Let's give the applause to the whole speaker. And I'll return the floor to the panitia. Thank you.
Thank you very much for speakers and moderators of the session. And before we are concluding the session, there is a token of appreciation from the Minister of Environment and Forestry. And I would like for Mr. Nur Adi Wardoyo to help us to give out the certificate. Thank you very much for all the speakers and moderators for the session of reducing the pressure on ecosystem through wildlife and biodiversity conservation. And that concludes our session. Our next session will begin in 5 minutes at 4:40. The title of the session will be Strengthening Public-Private People Partnership to Support Rural Development and SDGs Achievement in Indonesia Peatland Landscape. So those of you who are interested for the next session, please come to Indonesia Pavilion and join us in 5 minutes. Thank you.
one of the largest intact peat forests in Southeast Asia.